Rob DeVita. I'm the CEO and founder of Mejeticks.
What the heck is that?
It's the greatest name not taken.
Okay, so I understand where the name came from, the two worst teams on planet Earth, but how did
The
you?
three worst teams:
Oh, my bad. Why don't you explain the
the
name?
Mets, the Jets, and the Knicks. Which I just got a text today that I guess Ian Poulter named his live golf team like Mejeticks or something like that. He's like one or two letters away from
But same concept.
us taking down GoDaddy and getting 1,000 hits on our website today.
So what was the genesis behind that? Where are you originally from? I know some of your story because I've got to know you for a while, but New York?
So born and bred in Long Island. Grew up in Long Island. Went to all boys Catholic high school there.
Explains a few things.
The Harvard of Long Island. We have to go to Chaminade High School. And then I went to Long Island University out on Long Island. So
big risk taker.
Yeah, I mean, I went pretty far. Well, when you sort of have to choose from going to college and having college debt wherever you want to go, or having a full ride for football and track, you take full ride for football and track, even though it's a half an hour from your house.
So wait a second. A full ride for...
It was many pounds ago.
Okay, so listen, I knew that you could basically dunk. Do you still play hoops?
I have retired.
Okay, you
hoops.
still coaching?
I coach hoops, yeah. I coach a high school AAU team over the summer.
Is it your own kid?
No.
That's
do
a
it
little
for fun.
bit sketch now.
Just do it for fun.
Wasn't Hicks helping you on that too? He was coaching with you for a while.
Yeah, so we coach. I still coach at my younger daughter's school, and he was helping me coach there. I think he moved, didn't he? Again?
He's down here now.
No, so there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
he retired. Now all I do is see his pictures of him and
his girlfriend's dog.
Yeah, which I think is his dog because he's throwing the ball with it every fucking day on Snapchat. I'm like, what? Can I see you? I got to see this dog.
I just like how she assigns him those types of chores. John, go take care of the dog right now. And
he does it.
And he just does it.
She's way better looking than him. I mean, he's going to do what she says.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're from Long Island and you got a full ride to Long Island University?
Yep. At that time, it was called CW Post. It was a small Division II school up in Long Island.
How far was that from where you grew up?
Half an hour. But between a half an hour and 2 hours, depending on traffic.
Okay. And then from there, so did you play all 4 years or how's that work?
No, I didn't really play a lot.
Were you on the team?
I was on the team.
Got your scholarship?
I was, I was fast.
What? Yeah. So what did you do in track?
So I was a decathlete in track. So my sophomore and my junior year, I ran a 4.38 40. And then I was a decathlete. So
it's a lot of numbers. Is that fast?
Yeah. It's like usually every year I'll come in top 10 at the combine.
Oh,
when you're sort of looking like,
so you had some skills.
I'm like Al Bundy, you go back and you look like, oh, I could have done that shit
back in the day. All right, so listen, so you were fast.
I was fast.
And then what did you play in football?
Wide receiver.
Did you have hands?
I could catch, yeah.
All right, so how did you go to college, and everyone at college is good, Division II, Division I, whatever. So now you show up and you were probably the man in high school, and then you go to college.
I was tiny. I mean, I was 5'11", 165 pounds, soaking wet.
How tall are you now?
I'm 5'11 3/4.
Okay, I'm like,
so I put a whole nother 3/4 of an inch on me.
Nice. That 3/4 inch, it matters.
It does.
So,
it does.
So when you graduated, what did you do? And what did you study, by the way? I mean, were you a nerd at the same time?
Definitely not a nerd. I
Finance guy?
As a biology major, and then I realized that when my nose hits the microscope, that this wasn't going to be good for me. I couldn't even see through because my nose is hitting the microscope. I'm like, this is I got to go do something else. So then I transferred to marketing, and I loved it. And I really got into IT while I was in college.
So when was that? How old are you?
So probably 19. So there's sort of two guys that really turned me on to just technology in general.
So
right?
marketing towards technology.
Yeah. So first was my mom, right? My parents had always worked in the AT&T field or some type of telecom field growing up.
Really?
And then I got my first computer, like an Apple IIci. I'm like, this is great. I can use Bank Street Rider. I can play Dig Dug. This is awesome.
How old were you then? Was that middle school?
That had to be high school. That had to be probably 14 or 15.
And what year did you graduate high school?
94.
Okay, so we're about the same age. So you're in high school and you get an advanced Mac, it sounds like, and then
you just had a Mac back then. Like, the fuck, you had a computer. You're like, oh, wow, this is awesome.
I didn't even know what Mac was when I was in
Yeah,
high school.
either did I. My mom brought it home. I was like, "What is this thing?" She's like, "It's a computer." I was like, "All right, we'll give it a shot."
What's a computer?
Yeah. You're trying to figure out how to get online, like AOL. You're putting the disc in. You're waiting for
I
the
remember those
dial-up.
days. I remember those days. So your parents came from telecom, both mom and dad?
Yeah. So my dad was 49 years at AT&T. Only company he's ever worked for. Started climbing a pole and then ended up running one of their network operation centers.
So he just threw in the towel. Didn't want to do 50 just for.
You're so close, right? So at the time, when he retired, there were 280 something thousand people at AT&T, right? And there were only like 240 people had been there longer than him. Now listen, he's 49 years. So what are those 239 other people? How long have they been there?
They were probably like companies that got absorbed by them. That's
maybe they might be dead in the wall and no one knows that they're even still there. They're still on payroll.
That's crazy. So your parents got you into the nerdy stuff, but you were still an athlete. You went to college.
Yep.
And your booger factory was just getting in the way. So you started going marketing towards IT because you were already interested in that stuff. And then what did that take you to?
So I had two buddies in college that really, opened my eyes to what can technology do, right? One was one of my fraternity brothers named Scott Byorski. Like, I thought the computer was just for it was a giant typewriter with a printer. The stuff this kid could do with Photoshop and Quark Express, and we had the most legit fraternity t-shirts in
because he was doing all the digital imaging,
like Animal House with Yosemite Sam in them, and our letters on the house. I mean, it was unbelievable what this kid could do with a computer. He ended up being the webmaster while he was in college for our college.
But what was he studying?
Computer.
Okay, so it was in his field.
Computer graphics or something like that.
You still keep up with that guy?
Yeah. So every time I get back to New York, I try to go see a bunch of these guys.
These are all your fraternity brothers. What fraternity was this?
Sigma Alpha Mu, Sammy.
Gotcha.
I was one of the only Gentiles in the all Jewish fraternity.
Is that what it is?
I got in with the nose though. People thought I was Jewish. It was perfect. Other guy was another super smart fraternity brother of mine, a guy named Dave Anton. And Dave was working at a company called RSL. It was Ronald S. Lauder from the Estee Lauder family. He started a telecom company and reselling, long distance minutes. And I needed a job during college because I needed to go out and buy shit and do stuff. And I ended up getting a job. Dave got me an interview. I was doing cold calling Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, selling long distance over the phone.
Really?
At 10 cents a minute, calling
10 cents a minute,
100 people a day. We had index cards and we just go through them all, and I did really well at it. So I'm like, well, this is something that I'm actually pretty good at, selling stuff and, and getting sort of, more knowledge on the IT space. So I graduated
specifically around telecom.
Yeah, specifically around telecom. Well, and then I think I was the youngest person ever to get downsized because the company went out of business one day and then the entire department got downsized. And I was 19 years old when I got downsized.
Oh, wow.
And I went to work and they're like, we're closed today. I was like, it's like some shit like you see out of a movie. You go in there and there's nobody in there.
For real?
Yeah.
Like boiler room stuff.
Yeah.
So, and now where were you working at? Long Island?
On Long Island, yeah.
No kidding.
Yep. Right.
Did you ever travel outside of Long Island?
Not really. Well, yeah, when we took bus rides to go to Massachusetts, 7-hour bus rides to go play football.
Whoa. That's some
and then
football.
we did some track meets down in the Virginia area. But growing up, we went to Florida every year. That's what people from New York do.
Yeah.
You get in the car and you drive down to St. Petersburg. You go to Met spring training every year, and then you go to Disney World.
Ah, I gotcha.
You go 24 hours in the brown Toyota Corolla hatchback. No seatbelt, just laying back there like
you don't
not
have
a care
to
in the
have
world.
Your mom could just do this.
Yeah.
They could just stop you.
Yep. So there wasn't a sort of a ton of travel. We went to Florida every year, and then traveling around sort of the Northeast.
Any brothers or sisters? Or?
I have an older sister who's still in New York.
Long Island?
Yep.
How much older?
She's 2 years older.
So her boyfriends in high school beat you up?
No. Because I was still, even though I was 160 pounds, I was still pretty good.
All right. Well, you were fast at least.
I could get away if they tried to kick my ass.
So, all right. So that's our job that you got laid off, downsized at 19. So did you go to school there and work while you were in school?
Yeah. So worked while I was in school. Probably the coolest job I had, my last year there was I worked for a distributor for Anheuser-Busch.
That would be an awesome job.
It was like it's your college like ideal job if you're over 21.
Especially if you're working or you're at a fraternity. You're the social chair of the fraternity then by then?
I was probably the president at that time. But like this job was passed down from like fraternity brother to fraternity brother working at this distributor.
Oh, awesome.
And they'd get a house out in the beach every year and you could go stay at the house for free. And like your job was to go out at night and buy people Bud Light. That was your job. It was to go out and give away T-shirts and hats, judge bikini contests.
I can see how you could struggle with all this.
This is the job. And during the day, I would work in the office on their computer. So I would make banners. I would go and design. Like you walk into a 7-Eleven, they've got all the different beer cases. Like there's a rhyme and a reason to all that. It's like position 1 is right on the right when you come in, when you look to the right. And that's where Anheuser-Busch wanted all their stuff. So we'd go in and we would design all of the cooler cases, and then the drivers would go back in and reorganize all the beer in there, whether it's theirs or not, and put theirs in position 1A.
Interesting.
So that's, I got into doing some computer work during that, which was a lot of fun.
So after the downsizing Anheuser-Busch, and then walk me through the rest, like what did you do when you graduated?
So then I went and worked for the family business.
What?
My dad got me an interview at AT&T. And I was super fortunate, right? Because, there's a bunch of different layers at AT&T, like where you can start, knocking on doors. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to go in at the sort of the top end. We were dealing with, billion-dollar companies in a media and entertainment vertical. So it was super cool. Like my customers were Viacom. So I remember going into a meeting with MTV.com back when it was a separate business unit. And I come in an AT&T outfit, right? I'm in almost a suit with no tie. And I'm meeting with the guy who's the head of MTV.com. And he's in cargo shorts, bleach blonde hair, t-shirt, and we're playing like Xbox. He's like, dude, don't ever come in here again dressed like that. He goes, you won't be allowed in. So then I would be the one guy who would roll into Tribeca in this outfit in the AT&T office because I had to go to MTV.com. So then I had the Tribune out of Chicago. So a lot of cool companies that you sort of get to know. The biggest thing I did at AT&T was I took every training they had. Number one, it was always in like other places so I could go on a plane. All right. So I got to go to Atlanta, California, all different places just to take as many trainings as I could get because they had all this training. Like that's the best thing about a company like that is that they train their people really, 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 really well. But then it's up to you to do something with it.
What was the training for? What would they train you on?
Any type of technology they had. It was intro to telecom. It was like back in the day, frame relay, ATM, private lines, internet access, voice. Like they had training for everything.
I could understand with such a dynamic, and it used to evolve pretty aggressively. It seems like there was a lot of things that were constantly being probably added to the list of things you could market and sell. Is that big part of the driver of trying to get you all proficient on everything that was rolling out as it was developing?
I think the biggest driver was I got to go someplace.
Oh, I got you.
And in order to go someplace, you had to go to training.
Okay.
And I look back at it, I could not have done anything subsequently in my career if I hadn't done that. Just the amount of knowledge you can get at a company that size is amazing if you want to go out and take advantage of it for whatever reason, right? I wanted to go travel, but in order to travel, I had to go do training. And it was awesome.
So with that though, what all were you exposed to? Because AT&T has it's all business to business, it sounds like. So It has were they doing managed services? Were they?
We sold everything across the board, right?
Okay.
We sold, managed networks, frame relay networks, sort of back in the day, right? You wanted a T1 for internet. It was like $1,500.
Oh, wow.
You can get like 3 gigs for $1,500 right now.
Yeah.
So that was really the of, people were moving to frame relay networks from whatever they were on before. And then to ATM networks, because you were able to do quality of service, you could do broadcast television over it, which was important for the vertical that I was in, the media space. And then we got into, which sort of changed my direction, was AT&T had all these data centers, right? And we'd work on these big data center deals. The biggest one we did was with a company named the Tribune. They were with, I think, Exodus at the time, or somebody who was going out of business, and they had to move like in the middle of the night. And it was the largest managed hosting deal that AT&T had ever done.
Oh, wow.
And I was fortunate enough to have a super smart guy with me again, a guy named Steve Sullivan, who's still there. God rest you, Steve. And we did the largest managed hosting deal in the history of AT&T.
And was that late 90s, early 2000s?
That was early 2000s.
Gotcha. That sounds about right.
And then I met a guy through that who ended up being, the account was so big, they assigned an AT&T executive in case shit goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
You can call this one dude. And this was a guy named Eric Shapkara. And Eric really became my mentor in the business at that time.
He's in New York?
He was in New York, yeah. And he ran the managed hosting business for AT&T. So he was instrumental in us getting this deal done and making sure this customer was happy. So then he leaves and goes and becomes the CEO of this company called Telex.
Oh, wow. What was his name again?
Eric Shapkara.
Okay.
I'm like, what the hell is this? And at that time, AT&T was purchased by SBC. It was super hard to get anything done there anymore. Like, it's funny, like when we were AT&T and it was 25,000 people, I could still get shit done for my customers. When it's 250,000, like we'd work on a project for months and we'd find out there's a whole business unit that does this. And you're like,
oh, wow.
And you just couldn't get things done for your customers anymore. And that infuriated me more than anything, right?
Sure.
So Eric said, hey, I'm taking over this company. He's like, you got to come check it out. And let me know what you think. And I went up.
Where was the headquarters for Telex? New York.
New York.
Right? Yeah.
So they just done their deal with digital. They just done their deal with digital, and they brought in Eric to become the CEO.
Interesting.
So Eric.
What were the other founders, like Peter and Hunter or something?
Hunter and Todd Raymond.
Todd.
Peter, yep. And Eric came in, and they just done this deal with digital, right? Where they took over their meet me rooms in all these carrier hotels. You know, some of these were great spots. Some of these were absolute toilets.
Do you think it was a good deal?
For who?
For Telex.
It was a great deal for Telex.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll get into a little bit more about how.
Yeah, I want to understand.
Having that partnership with digital allowed them to scale that like no other company would have been able to do if they didn't have a partner like digital.
But being able to do that, you know, they were at least smart enough to create a skill set or a platform that said we can do that, because that's a
Correct.
big undertaking. Digital was at the time probably the largest wholesale provider.
Yep.
Maybe on a space power and cooling perspective, they probably still are, for all I know. Market cap is a different story, but they were the biggest shop. I had Crosby on once, and we were talking about their early days.
Yep.
And they were just monsters. I remember when I first got in this space, they were like Starbucks. Like, you don't know who number 2 and number 3 is, but you always knew who number 1 was.
Exactly.
Know? So Telex wasn't that big then, though.
So Telex had 60 Hudson Street, and they had 56 Marietta.
Okay.
So they had.
Which one was bigger? 60 Hudson?
Well, they owned the building at 56 Marietta. 60 Hudson Street, they just leased space at.
Okay.
The company started at 60 Hudson Street. So how it started was they were a calling card business. And they had to get minutes from different places, and they were trying to get minutes from Quest. And in order to get minutes from Quest, you had to go to Verizon and buy a local loop that went from, like, I don't know, let's say the 5th floor at 60 Hudson Street, out the building to Verizon, come back into the building, go back up to the floor above them, where Telex had their voice switch. And it was like thousands and thousands of dollars to get this DS3 from one floor to another, because they had to leave the building. So they said, hey, why don't we just run a conduit from our space to Quest space? And we can bypass Verizon, and we can do this. And that's how the business of the interconnection started for Telex.
Really?
Yep. Different people heard that they had the ability to get to this carrier, and they came in, they bought space and power, and they just connected them. And that's how it started.
Really?
Not out of any genius, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. It was an internal need that came into a really, really good business that essentially changed the way that people connect now.
And the funny part about that is it sounds like the genesis didn't come from like the pursuit of trying to find creative channels to generate revenue. It was they were looking to reduce cost, which
Correct.
is how they,
yeah,
which is awesome because, it's creative both ways. But so were you there then, or were you still in orbit around it with Eric?
So I came in, I think I was like, I don't know, the 3rd person hired after they did the acquisition of all the digital spaces. So I came in, I was down in Dallas at this time. So
how were you at Dallas? Did AT&T move you there?
AT&T moved me there.
How long were you at AT&T for?
It feels like 100 years. Probably six years.
All right, that's a long time to be at a group like that. That's a big shop. So
then I was
they moved you to
managing
Dallas. Gotcha.
these, business units of these big conglomerates. And they said, we need somebody down here to manage hotels.com, match.com. We had a big RFP going on with Blockbuster, knock on wood. And those are all Viacom and IAC owned entities, and Westwood won out of Houston. And they needed somebody down here. The business wanted someone local down here. So I met my wife up in New York. She was from Dallas. I said, hey, do you want to go move down here and give us a shot? I actually moved before she did. So I was down here a couple months before she got her transfer from AT&T and moved down here.
Oh, she was at AT&T as well.
Yep.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So she was in the finance vertical doing sales up there. There was no finance companies down here. So she took a service management role down here to move back down to Dallas.
I got you. That makes a ton of sense. I was trying to understand that whole, what would make you make that transition.
Yeah. Well, now I know it's the greatest place in the world, right? No state income tax, no winter, and no traffic.
Yeah. I think Texas as a whole is definitely leading the pack right now. Some would argue.
I was an early adopter. Somebody call me a pioneer. From moving
Trailblazing.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I mean, I guess the opportunity, did you create that opportunity? Because you were focused on media and entertainment, it sounded like?
Yeah, so media and entertainment, and those were the business units I came down here
Hospitality,
for.
Yeah.
And then, then Eric called and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. He goes, come and take a look. So I went down to 2323 Bryan Street. I go, this isn't a data center. There was open racks everywhere,
sure.
Wires everywhere. He's like, it is a data center, but we do something different here. And he went through the whole, we're going to connect people to places, and we're going to connect people to each other.
So where did the term carrier hotel come from then? Was that around the same time?
I think that was probably, I think everyone knew that 60 Hudson Street was a carrier hotel, 56 Marietta, 1 Wilshire, Terramark. I mean, the only people doing this at like a bigger scale were like Terramark down in Miami, the Nap.
Equinix?
Which is now Equinix. Yeah. Equinix, predominantly in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Who
else?
Wilshire.
But who else?
In LA.
I only knew those two big shops.
The one in Seattle, the Westin building.
So there's a lot of small retail, like regional guys that were doing it, but Telex and Equinix were doing it on a much grander scale, right? So Telex
and Switch and Data at the time.
Switch and Data, that's right.
Yeah, because Switch and Data had a big space at Bryan Street right underneath us, and they had the majority of the carriers at the time. Them and Equinix were the main players at the Infomart.
Sure.
They ran a very, very good business. It was an excellent acquisition for Equinix to take them sort of out of play, and then subsequently shed the tier 3 assets that they didn't want.
But how long did it take for you to kind of scratch the paint with Eric with Telex to figure out like, no, this seems exciting. I want to go sell Cross Connects?
When I had known Eric for a while at that time, I had the utmost confidence in him. I didn't need to know anything about what they were doing. I knew that he was going to be successful, and I signed on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you worked
Dallas? Out pretty well.
No kidding. Well, I think that was, a dozen years ago when digital just finally, I think they absorbed them for like $4 or $5 billion, something like
that. The second time after they missed it the first time.
Oh, wow. So what's that story? Walk us through.
So
you're at Telex. You guys
I'm at Telex, and there've been rumors going around that we were getting acquired and stuff, and everyone thought it was digital. It's a perfect fit for digital. It's perfect. And Abry came in.
Oh wow.
And Abry won. Because before that it was GI owned. There was Abry owned, and then subsequently got flipped again to digital, which paid 100 times what they should have paid if they just would have kept it and operated the business themselves, right?
Sure.
But they were focused on other things then. And it was a really good deal for both companies. Telex really scaled that business, which I think if digital didn't have this business now, they'd have a totally different composition of what their company looks like. We talked about how that partnership sort of worked perfectly for both parties.
Mm-hmm.
The two hottest spots, right, were Cermak and New York. We had both ends of the financial rainbow, and this was low latency trading time. Like this was, people would go into 350 Cermak and walk off how far they are from I don't know, SIM, whatever, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, because they wanted to be closer to these guys for trading. You could get whatever price you wanted for a cabinet inside of Cermak, and inside of 111 8th Avenue or 60 Hudson Street, because this is where the financial guys.
So you could get it, or you could charge.
You could charge whatever you wanted.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it was like taking orders at these two locations.
Yeah.
And it was a very good business, and we could sell cabinet at a time there.
You would sell it by the cabinet. There was no power. Cabinet, it was all in, right? So
$5,000 for a cabinet, Cermak.
And how much power can that one cabinet accommodate?
3 kW.
That's awesome.
And it wasn't about the cabinet. It wasn't about the power. It was about where you were.
Access. Yeah.
That's where you needed to be. But the beauty of that is like we would sell a lot of these cabinets, right? One of the teams in Chicago did, and New York did, right? We didn't do a lot of that in Dallas. But the guys in Chicago and New York did, and every time we would blow through space, we had a partner that had turnkey space ready to go the next day. No build out time. It was ready to go because they weren't selling cabinets, and we were burning through cabinets there because every one of these traders wanted a lower latency route or to get closer to the ecosystem. So that helped digital, right, by showing higher occupancy because we're essentially just leasing these suites. However many square feet you can give us and how much power, we're going to take it.
Sure.
Space came up. Telex bought a company at 111 8th Avenue, Tesh's company, which fueled our growth in New York, right? So now you had Hudson Street and you had 111 8th Avenue.
So when they bought Tesh's company, that's how Tesh became Telex as well?
Yep.
What was he at that time? Was he the chief revenue officer?
He was a CMO, I think, at the time when he came over. Super smart guy. Again,
sure.
I think that guy touches turns to gold.
No, I agree. He is awesome.
But that was really big, right? Because we had essentially the two most interconnected buildings in Manhattan. We had a presence in with the lion's share of the connectivity. And then there were other, sort of ancillary assets. Like Dallas was very good, but it wasn't the Infomart, right? So, but the Infomart was more internet based. We were more telecom based at Bryant Street.
Who Infomart was Infomart back then, right? Yep. So, and you were talking about when you say digital or Dallas, you're talking about 2323?
Yeah, 2323.
And just hadn't exploded enough yet, I guess.
It had really good connectivity there, but all the internet exchanges were over at the Infomart. Like we still did really good business at Bryant Street, right? But it wasn't like Cermak. It wasn't like, New York.
You would lose to Infomart from 2323 because of a latency factor?
We would lose because there's different types of connectivity. The Infomart was more internet based, right? The big internet exchanges were there. Switch and Data's exchange was there. I think it was PAX, and the Equinix exchange was there. We had no exchange at Dallas. The only exchange was in Switch and Data, which was below us, which we didn't have access to.
Gotcha.
But for more of the voice applications, Bryant Street was perfect because we had a lot of voice players in there. There were still, I think we had 25 carriers there as opposed to 200 at the Infomart. So we still did good business here. It just wasn't like New York or Chicago.
Who else were you selling against in those days? Who was the big competitors for you guys?
It was Switch and Data and it was Equinix.
Okay.
There were some, DataBank had 400 South Ackerd, which had some good connectivity in it. And it showed really well because it was the old Federal Reserve
building.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have that gun range underneath the Data Hall.
Yep. Now we had really good success. Good success in Phoenix.
With who?
120 East Van Buren.
Oh, that's right.
The first deal that I did at Telex was with Match.com. Match did put a data center out in, what's that suburb?
In which market?
Outside of Phoenix.
Oh, Chandler?
And Chandler. I think their first data centers went up in Chandler.
Yep.
And they did a big footprint there. I think it was digital, right? One of the first facilities out there.
Yeah.
And
Cyrus built right next to them.
There was nothing out there. You had SRP was the only network you could get out there. You can never get a quote. You had to sign an NDA to get a quote, but it all came back to 120 East Van Buren.
Yeah.
So we did, I don't know, a 300 square foot cage for Match.com, which was this is right when we had acquired the asset from Digital. It was awesome. Like, I think my SEs still hate me because I had so many questions. I'd never done this before. So it was a guy named Pat Delpret and Kevin Strassheim. And I used to call Kevin, and Kevin used to auto forward me to Pat because Kevin was tired of talking to me. But we ended up getting our deal done out there, which really launched that facility and put that facility on the map for using it as a carrier space for outside of the building, like where you could long haul and come back and connect to all the different networks, and then take them back out to your other data center.
So is any of the stuff that you went to training with when you were at AT&T helping you through this, or is it all your mentors by now that are kind of patching together with the tribal stuff?
I think the space that we're in, and just the data center space in general, you have to have an understanding of how the network operates. And that's what I got at AT&T. I could teach you how to sell data center in 4 minutes. It's like 3 calculations, right? I tell everyone, we're not building rockets here. It's how the ecosystem interacts with the data center, which you can't learn in a day. It's why do you need internet exchanges, right? What's the difference between a private line and internet access, and now SD-WAN and IPsec tunneling and VPNs, all that stuff. You're a much better salesperson if you understand the ecosystem around the data center to sell data center.
There's a lot of other collateral benefits in having a good cadence with that ecosystem, because the chorus sings louder than the soloist, right? Yeah. You want those people in your corner. I mean, how many times have guys like you and I or LD, whoever, where something comes along, we hear about it, it doesn't really fit in our dojo, but we do know somebody that does. Not like you're Trojan horsing your friend through, but you do want to be able to build into the karma system and be like,
I want to send
business.
The most important thing to anyone in business is your customer relationships.
Sure.
And I want to send them to somebody who knows what they're doing and who's going to take care of them. Like, people are going to screw up, and that's totally fine. But if I'm sending you to somebody, I expect you to make it right when you screw up, and you expect the same thing of me.
Sure. So how long were you at Telex for before they got?
I was probably there 4 or 5 years. Then I went to Cologix.
But hold on. So at Telex, when did you know the party was over?
They were starting to get bigger. And I'm not a big company guy.
No, I hear you.
And it was just sort of the right time to exit the business. I had left sales, and I was in doing some partnership stuff. This is a good story. So me and this guy, Dow Brown, put together, we had what was at the time called the Ethernet exchange. And everyone had an Ethernet exchange, right? We're going to connect Ethernet to Ethernet, and it's going to be awesome. You can, put one Ethernet plug in, and you can connect to 5 different other Ethernet providers. The problem in this whole concept is that AT&T and Verizon are never going to get on board with this, and they're the largest Ethernet providers in the United States. So they said, well, we've spent millions of dollars on all this equipment to create these Ethernet exchanges. What are we going to do with it? So I think I still have the slide deck where Daryl and I conceptualized the Telex Cloud Exchange.
Just like started with a napkin, you guys are sketching stuff out.
Like, we've got presentations we built on this. Like,
we started from somewhere.
How do you reallocate this hardware and use it for something that's going to not be Ethernet, right? And it was, have a customer come in, connect to this exchange, and they can connect to SoftLayer, they can connect to AWS and Google. This was before Equinix had conceptualized it. It was, hey, let's go out and reutilize these assets and build these cloud-connected facilities. Equinix got to market first. At that time, I had exited the business and went over to Cologix.
What made you go to Cologix?
It was a good opportunity to stay down here in Dallas and get to run my own team.
And they were in the Infomart.
They were in the Infomart, right? And so I got to go over to see, like, what's so great over here? I'm like, I've been selling against this place.
Yeah.
And I still had to sell against that place because we weren't Equinix in that building. Yeah. We were sort of the red-headed stepchild inside of that building. But Grant and Todd and Graham and all those guys gave me an opportunity to sort of run my own team for the first time.
Did you know those guys already?
I didn't, no.
Okay.
They had an opening, and this guy, Dave Soroka, was over there too, running sales. So we hired a team down here in Dallas. They had just done an expansion at the Infomart. Took down, I don't know, a meg or 2 or something down there. And we hired a team down there. This guy, Brian Parsons, who works for me now, runs sales. The guy, Brian.
Is that how you met Brian?
Yeah, that's how I met Brian.
So you hired him at Cologix?
Yep.
Gotcha. And what made you hire Brian?
Every single person that I knew told me, you got to hire this guy. He sells shit.
Gotcha.
And the same thing with Brian Pant. Like, these guys sell shit. You need to go out and hire them. Excuse me. So,
because that's when I met Parsons through you.
Yep.
How long ago was that?
The first thing that we did was that what's the data center group?
Where I was at that time?
No, AFCOM. We did the AFCOM meeting at the Infomart in their conference room. That was like my second week at Cologix, and you came in and spoke.
I do remember that. I remember that. I remember, walking through that with you. That whole
because the place was packed and like,
yeah,
I don't think anyone knew who Cologix was. I barely knew who Cologix was.
I think all of us were like that, right? So we're like, hey man, how can we help you get the word out and do what you do? Because like I said, the ecosystem,
it works.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, and we, I mean, Brian absolutely crushed it. We were the #1 sales team at Cologix for 3 years until I exited the business. It's funny. You take different things from different places. The greatest thing that I think that I talked to Grant a month ago, right, in his new venture, and I was like, the greatest thing you guys told me is that you've got to build a platform and then put the pieces into that platform, right? Because there's a lot of consolidation going on. They were acquiring all these different businesses, all, in Canada and the US. Some are bigger, some are smaller, but they laid the platform down so they could just cookie cutter these things in. And it was a relatively seamless transition. So it was the planning that went into that. And the executive team at Cologix, I think, is unrivaled in what they've done after Cologix.
Yeah,
Todd's at E-Structured, crushing it over there. They're over at Stack, doing a great job over there. Graham is now back into the business. I mean, they've turned out some really, really good executives from there that are doing great things in the space. And I think that's why Cologix was so successful.
And what was their big focus at that time when you were there? Was it carrier hotel?
Canada. Carrier hotels in Canada.
Okay.
We controlled the majority of the interconnection in Canada.
Out of like
Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. I think Montreal, they had 8 or 9 like data centers there. You couldn't get a connection without going to Cologix.
Interesting.
And that's what we used from Dallas, right? Because I was one of the only people who had worked in this business before at Telex. So when I talk to my sales guys, I'm like, guys, you got to look for people where do we have our greatest benefit? It's not Dallas. It's Canada. We sold more stuff in Canada from Dallas than the Canadians team sold because we knew how to do it. And we knew the types of customers to go profile to do it. And
were you focused on a specific vertical again?
It was telecom companies, CDNs. It was anybody who needed a lot of connections that wasn't in Canada yet. And Canada had just sort of opened up their market to other telecom providers. So we had all of Canada. We had Dallas. And then we acquired Montreal, then acquired Columbus, and then acquired Jacksonville, Florida.
Who is the financial sponsor of Cologix?
So it was Columbia Capital and GVR Private Equity, which was Grant's own private equity firm.
Gotcha. Did you ever deal with the Columbia Capital guys?
We had, when they were down here for meetings, we'd meet a couple of those guys if they had board meetings in this area. Great interactions with them, really helped grow the business. Hear some horror stories about people not wanting to go into meetings with the private equity guys. And I didn't hear that from the Cologix guys. At least from my perception, Grant and the executive team were very close with the Columbia guys. And really did some really good acquisitions there.
So, I know that when you were at Cologix, is that when you started Channelpalooza, or did you start that when you left and you started your own gig?
Start that after I left.
So when you left Cologix, is that when you started consulting on your own and then you made
I went to 1547 then.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
I said, I'd known Corey and Todd and Pat and Jerry and all great guys.
Maldari's over there now.
And Maldara's over there.
The Italian stallion.
Yeah, is he making
cutting boards
in the back of Ramland?
I don't know, man. Those were some amazing looking boards. You bought one from him, didn't you?
I bought a bunch of them from him.
Oh, yeah.
I bought probably 2 boards from him. I bought a charcuterie thing. I bought the ring toss game from him. Every time I'd see something that was made out of wood, I'd send to him and said, "Can you make this?"
Yeah.
And it would show up 3 months later at my house.
Well, he's an ultimate perfectionist, right? So you could see how he puts a lot of craftsmanship into things. Yeah. I had the opportunity to work with him when we were at Nova.
Yeah.
But he's over there now running the construction team, which is great for those guys because
he's a big get.
And he knows his shit.
He could have gone and worked anywhere.
He could have.
So it was a very good hire for them, and they're doing well over there now. They're buying stuff. They're doing a great job over at 1547.
I actually talked to Corey for the first time, like not even a month or and a half, 2 months ago. You know how this industry is. You could pick right up where you left off if you hadn't talked to a guy in 2 years, which is great. But it's good to see those guys are doing good. I love Pat and Jerry.
And I learned a lot over there. I mean, I learned a lot over there, and it was really more of a startup.
Yeah, it was. They just had. Hold on. This story was it's 1547 because they thought it was. And remember, we did the math one night. Were you with us? And we were in like Hell's Kitchen having dinner at that famous place, that Italian place I love. And
they thought it was 1,547 miles
Dallas.
from Mattawan to Dallas,
to Corey's place, or something like that.
Ramland to Corey's house.
And then we mapped it, and it wasn't.
It wasn't. Yeah.
I remember that. So
after that, I had got to know the guys at the Infomart when I was at Mejeticks. That's just when Shaputis and Andrew Gold had come in and had taken over that asset and started running it. And had left 1547 and went and did some consulting for the Infomart guys. They want to start a channel. They were going to try to do retail, but the underlying was we're getting ready to sell this thing. So let's try to get our ducks in a row as much as possible. So worked over there for a few months, ended up bringing Parsons on over there. He ended up taking the full-time job there. I was a consultant, and then I transitioned out and started running Mejeticks.
Was Parsons with you at 1547?
No.
Okay. So he stayed
was at Flexential, then he was at Greenhouse. But he knew the 1547 guys because Greenhouse was our biggest tenant at the time.
Gotcha.
So I was able to introduce him to the Greenhouse guys to get him on board there. And then started Mejeticks, and was really super fortunate to do. The first deal I did was a deal for a hosting company that was getting screwed in Ashburn. Right?
Oh, so you were
they were at 500 or 600 kW there, and they were.
Were you the guy that sold it to him that screwed him over originally?
No. But it was a buddy that I knew, like through multiple friends. He said, "Hey, I need some help here. What's the market pricing in Ashburn?" I go, "I don't know." I'm like, "I'll go find out." I'm like, "What do you?" I'm like, "No, don't even tell me what you're paying." I'm like, "I don't want to know." I go, "Let me go find out." I come back. I'm like, "Hey, it's between that time. It was between 140 and 152,
and that's
plus E.
Okay,
it's a base rent. I go, "What are you paying?" He goes, "I'm at 177, and they gave me an offer at 178 for 5 more years." I go, "Yeah, you're not doing that deal." I'm like, so it was just me. I put together the competitive landscape of what 5 competitors look like in this market. I said, you can go back to them or I can do it.
As an agent? So you're doing agent deals?
Yeah. So, and did his deal, and the beauty of his deal, right, it was large enough where I got paid up front for the entire contract. It was more like a real estate deal. So I now had the runway
by the operator. The operator paid you.
I now had the runway financially to go try this Mejeticks thing for a year.
But I thought that you shifted it to like an annuity-based model.
We did. So there's certain deals, like larger data center deals, aren't done on the annuity model. They're done more like a real estate transaction. And then started getting into. Then I had a buddy, and ended up being my largest customer now, and it was my customer while I was at AT&T 20 years ago.
No kidding.
And I said, "Hey, what are you doing, John?" He's like, "I think I'm getting screwed." And he had bought from me at Telex. He had bought from me. I don't think he sold anything at Collogic, but every place I was, he bought from me because we took care of him. And if it was a bad deal, I tell you, go someplace else. Don't buy this here. Go buy it someplace else.
Sure.
He's like, "Hey, I've got this space with Internet in Houston." He goes, "I need to know if I'm getting screwed or not." I go back, I look, I go, "Yeah, dude, I can get this for half the price in Dallas or in Houston." He's like, "All right, I need you to go out and renegotiate these contracts." So we renegotiate Houston for him. We renegotiate Singapore for him.
Perfect timing for that business to take off for you too, because at that time the market had not corrected, but it pivoted a little bit, right? Where the
bottom was starting to fall out of it from a pricing perspective.
Yeah, so everything became more of a commodity, I guess.
Yep.
And there were a lot of people that were rolling off these contracts that even if it wasn't, I mean, that's a pretty high rate plus E, right? But there were much higher deals like that I've seen when I worked for a different operator.
I mean, how do you think now, like, the people, who Data Bank bought all those Cyrus assets, there's got to be guys at $700 KW there. from
So
15 years ago
that had like a 5% annual escalator.
And then the Evoke guys, right? They bought all the AT&T assets, and that shit was expensive.
Sure.
Like there's a lot of corrections going on, but though, those are also older legacy buildings, right? Where every single asset's been depreciated already. So, all right, you know what? I'll charge you $1 because the space is essentially paid for itself because we haven't upgraded shit in 30 years.
Yeah. A lot of those facilities though, we're also getting a look at on the other side of what we do for the retrofits that are going on, because
they have to.
A lot of the gear and the MEP side specifically is coming to end of life, and they're like, and
how do you compete
building data centers versus retrofitting them is different. It's like open heart surgery.
Now take that in a carrier hotel. Like remember Hudson Street, right? Those are the most expensive places to build data center because the shit's not moving. Like you don't get to plan it. You have to build around shit.
So we built in 60 Hudson. We've done a couple projects there, right?
Yep.
And Maldari ran the team when we were doing the one where the crane fell.
Yep. I remember.
Jerry happened to be here in Austin with me. We were out hunting.
That's right. And they couldn't get no cell service.
Literally none. I wake up in the morning and Jerry goes, "Hey man, did you see that there's a crane that collapsed in Tribeca?"
Yeah.
And somebody died. And I guess like Jay-Z recorded a video of the crane going down, so you could kind of see it. And it was viral or some shit. And I'm like, well, New York's a big town. I'm sure that's
definitely not ours.
Turned out being our project, right? I remember I was standing out, on that ranch where I had the one pocket of coverage, and the whole time I'm, they're trying to prep me for, because I think I was the president of the company then, and whatever onslaught.
Someone's gonna call.
Oh yeah, they're like, don't redirect everybody to this PR or this lawyer or whatever. But I remember shit hitting the fan when I was with Jerry when that went down. But I mean, it sounds like during that time when you were like, I'm going to make a run at it. And I guess personally, what was it that made you say, is it that the industry needed what you have because nothing else existed? It needed a better version of it, or was it that you didn't want to go back?
I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back to.
What was the thing that you didn't want to do for though? Was it? It's obviously the travel.
Answer anybody.
Is that what it was?
Like
even if there was a good boss, a mentor, leader that could teach you still.
Yeah, no, definitely. If that was a scenario, right? That scenario wasn't available at the time.
Sure.
And I thought that we could, that I could do this on my own, right? I got a taste of it consulting for the Infomart. I had a quick win doing that data center deal. I said, well, I can do this. You're
like 40 probably, right? How
5 years ago, yeah.
40. So you're 40. So you're at 40. You got 2 kids.
Yeah.
And you're like, now's the time to go start my own
Probably
business.
Not the ideal time, but yeah.
Take a number. I did the same thing, right? So,
but it's funny. It's I had worked in, like, they call our space the channel, right? I'd worked in the channel before.
Why do they call it the channel? For those that aren't listening, because remember, so Robbie, introduce yourself real brief, and we're going to bring it back full circle. But think of it like this: there are people that are going to listen to this because they're friends of yours and Brian's and everybody else's, and there's people that are just getting into space and they don't know shit. Like Yep. They don't. When they know what baseball is, but they couldn't tell you what the bases are, who's in the infield and outfield. So for those people that are here, the data center is such a massive thing, right? You have a new marketing manager. I hired one just recently out of A&M, and she's been with me for just a few months, and trying to whiteboard what a data center industry looks like, how it's bifurcated actually, and each has their own individual ecosystem, right? And which side of the ball you're kind of playing on, and how close you are to the money at each time, because it's important to understand where the purchasing decisions are influenced from. So as you try to navigate that through, channel to some people, just like data centers to some people, is such a vague term. People are like, oh, well, it's server, storage, networking, software. And you're like, actually, it's the building.
That's the stuff that goes into it.
Does that make sense? But people have a different thing. So explain to people the channel that maybe not be understood.
So when we talk about channels, it's different distribution methods on how you sell your products and goods.
Sure.
So what we do at its base, right? So let's say you're going out, you're trying to lease office space. You're going to say, hey, I want to be in downtown Austin. I want to have a gym. I want to have a concierge, and I want to have, a south-facing view with open windows. Those are your requirements, right? So you're going to give that to the real estate agent or broker, and they're going to go out and find you 5 or 6 places that meet those, because you can't do it yourself, right? You don't know where all the hidden gems are. The landscape is just too big from an office space perspective to go out and do it yourself.
Sure.
Imagine that times 1,000 complexities for technology.
Sure.
That's what we do. So whether it's data center, whether it's network, whether it's contact center or voice, whether it's security, the landscape is so complex now. Really, companies are doing themselves a disservice by trying to do it themselves. They don't have the expertise to know who the new vendors are, what the new technologies are, who does things well because we've got a history with them, or don't have a history, but we've got trending data. We deliver an important service to enterprise customers right now. The technology landscape is so convoluted and complex and intertwined that having someone like us coach you through how to buy and what to buy is really important, because when you look at sort of your budget, right, your IT budget for, any 200 employees and up, 200 million up, your technology budget is way bigger than your real estate budget.
Oh yeah.
And you don't ever, you've been trying to do the technology thing yourselves, but it's been a foregone conclusion to go get a real estate agent to go do your office. And we get paid in a similar model.
From
we get paid from the providers that we represent.
Gotcha.
So we're placing you and your business with one of the technology providers. And it's not like we've got 5 providers, right? The portfolio is 350 different technology providers. Just for instance, there's over 16,000 data centers that we have the ability to represent. We've got tools that can go in and say, hey, I need to be 25 miles from Atlanta, but no more than 50 because I have a business continuity requirement. I need to have an AWS on-ramp. I need to have SOC 2 compliance. I need HIPAA, and I need PCI. I can tell you if there's a data center there in 3 minutes that meets all those requirements.
And how do you do that?
We've got software tools
that you've
databases that we license that allow us to do this.
Okay. So you're aggregating all this data over the course of time.
Yep.
And you get to the point where the data that you're mining through is still prevalent or relevant, I guess I would say. So what are you doing to keep your guys' edge? I mean, you're constantly...
We do a lot of training, right? And my people don't need to be experts, right? We need to be
exposed.
A mile wide and an inch deep.
Yeah.
We need to know, hey, we think we can help you here. Let me go to the bench and get somebody who's super smart in this, right? Because I have a specialist for security. I've got multiple specialists. There's so many facets of security. We wouldn't even want to go there. But from a voice perspective, we've got UCAS specialists, we've got CCAS specialists, we've got network specialists, SD-WAN infrastructure as a service specialists. We've got a huge bench of people that are scattered all across the U.S. That we can pull from to go in and do the deep dive to make sure that we understand what your requirements are and we can go find you the right fit.
I got you.
We're trying to keep you from running a year-long process of an RFI and an RFP because all you did was Google something. Right, so now you got to go through 12 vendors that you don't even know meet your requirements, but you just Google them, or they showed up on the Gartner Matrix. Like,
sure,
we know if these guys meet your requirements in the first hour, and we'll try to get you to market faster, which helps the customer, right? First of all, and helps the provider.
So much like a broker would go out and facilitate a wholesale deal on behalf of a large-scale enterprise and be like, hey, I'll write the RFP based on your requirements,
yep,
and I'll go shop it out. You want to be in Dallas, you got it. These are 5 groups that have the amount of inventory you need to be able to support these requirements and allow you to scale. And then they go in there and they negotiate. This person doesn't pay anything. The enterprise is just crowning this person king as a trusted advisor.
Yep.
And saying you have to be up to date with all the latest and greatest. You have to be cutting edge and know what the best is to offer at any one time. You can't let it's going to be a dynamically evolving inventory of options, I'm guessing. So they don't pay you. The vendors that you end up pulling through or selling through their product in or helping select, they pay you.
They pay us, yeah. The customer contracts directly with the provider. Provider provides all the support. We help with we're like a traffic cop.
Yeah.
We make sure the information goes both ways, and sometimes we translate it, right? Because enterprise customers don't always speak vendor language. We have we speak both, right? Because we were on the vendor side, and we know how we've got to translate that to layman's terms so enterprises can consume the grammar and the vocabulary that vendors still use that customers don't understand.
So this is kind of an oligopoly type of industries, but it's also very ancestral, we say, right? So how do people discover you? How do people find you? Is it all through like your channel Palooza? And you could talk a little bit about that.
Really, so we started in my line of business, right? You can have a lifestyle business and just sort of, keep doing what you're doing, hang out at the beach, a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Or you can try to scale the business. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those. I was fortunate enough to decide to scale the business, right? And we brought on Parsons. We've got a sales team now. We're in Austin, Dallas, and Denver. And I tell them, I sort of joke around. I'm like, I've sold through my entire network. I need other people's networks now to be able to scale the business, right? As we look to diversify the customer base and the revenue streams, to grow up and be, a real business, right? And we've gotten there. We've done a very good job at that. We'll continue to scale the business organically. And, we're very good at what we do now. We just went through a rebranding and a remessaging.
What's the rebrand?
We kept the name. We changed the logo.
Is that it right there?
This is the new logo.
Why?
So it's one team, one source. I mean, this I think looks a little bit more professional. When we went through our rebranding, it was a couple of things. It was, I want to know why people are buying from me. Like, I could tell you why I think they're buying, but if they only like dudes with big noses, then that's what we've got to go market towards. Thank God that wasn't it. But what it was like, hey, they were buying from Rob, or they were buying from Chelsea, or they were buying from Brian, right? And that's fine. But we needed to rebrand and remessage that, hey, this isn't about one person. It's not about me. It's about the process that we create, and it's about the engagement methodology that we go through with customers. So it became Mejeticks, one team, one source, ended up being the tagline.
One team, one source.
One team, one source.
So what is, like, how do people understand how where you pick up and leave off? Like how, if you're going 1 mile wide and 1 inch deep, you could do that just on the connectivity side alone, right? So do you get into the retail colo side, or are you helping sell racks?
So the best customers that we can help are the ones that we do multiple things for. And we'll come in and tell a customer, give us a shot on one project. If we do it well, then we're going to come back and ask for another one. If we don't do it well, we'll get this one fixed. And then, we'll ask for the business again, but we don't expect it. If we do a good job for you, we expect you to give us another opportunity on a different project.
So do you go out and have goals as you wanted to scale? Did you have a vision that said, okay, I want to double in size annually, arbitrary metric, right? But what are you looking to scale? Is it the amount of value you bring clients? Is it about the revenue, the top line revenue that you get? Or are you trying to?
I think when we sort of look at our core values, the first one is we put customers first. If you do the right thing by your customer, your revenue will follow. We do a lot of stuff pro bono, right? Just because it's the right thing to do. And then sometimes it's to build up goodwill.
Yeah.
But for sometimes it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We do deals all the time with a specific vendor that we may not get paid on because the customer needs it, and that's what's important to them. And if you take care of the customer, they will follow you and they will trust you. Like our biggest customer I talked about is the guy from 20 years ago who's been buying from me. Because he knows that at 2:00 in the morning, he calls my cell phone, I'm picking the phone up for him.
Sure. But that doesn't scale.
That does not scale, no. But as we...
Are you trying to get omnipresent, like more? You want a little Rob DeVita Jr. in New York and one in Wilshire?
We're going to hire people wherever we find good people.
So as long as they have a strong network, doesn't matter where they live?
And doesn't matter where they live. We want the best people we can get for the business.
Gotcha.
And people who are going to deliver value to our customers, which essentially are their customers. We tell people, they're building their own business, right? Everyone's got a little equity piece of the business, to continue to, want the company as a whole to do well.
Sure.
We have a different comp plan than a lot of people. It's an annuity based, right? They sell stuff. They're going to get paid for as long as they're a customer, as long as they work here.
Sure.
And that's how you try to build wealth for your employees. And that's really important for us, is to have, a family atmosphere where we can help affect people's lives. We go back to, SoftLayer, right? And their exit. I can't tell you how many millionaires were made from SoftLayer's exit because, people had a piece of the pie there, right? It changed people's lives, the amount of money that they were able to make with their exit there.
Sure.
And that's a testament to Lance and the entire team there, right? And how they set up that culture. Like, we're trying to do the same thing where people love coming to work here. They want to make a lot of money. Like Tesh says, my job's to cut you big checks.
Yeah.
I want to cut you big checks.
Sure. So when you look at that, I mean, I don't know, you said, hey, I just didn't want to have to answer to anybody. I mean, your client could fire you any day they want to simply by not giving you another purchase order. So
now I answer to more people than I did at any other company that I ever worked at, because it's not only that I have to worry about myself and my family. Every single one of my employees, I've got to worry about them and their families also, and make sure that we have the right environment, that, we've got health insurance now, we've got a 401k, we've outsourced our HR. Like, I've had to build a real company here because, string and duct tape doesn't work. It works for me, right? If I'm just by myself, but now I'm affecting other people's lives and their families. And you see pictures of their kids and their wives, and it's important now. So that's a whole different level of having to answer to people, which is way more stressful than working for any company. Because at the end of the day, I make a bad decision, it's on me, and it affects every single person inside of this organization.
So what are some of the biggest lessons learned since you started this business on your own?
Find good people. It's very hard to find good people. If you make a mistake hiring, you've got to correct it quickly. I think that's something that we've struggled with before. If I'm not good at something, I need to find somebody who is good at it. Like, bringing Brian in to run sales has really helped our productivity, because now I can go run the company and he can concentrate on just running sales.
Sure.
And like I said, having good people, right? I've got a woman, Brittany, who's worked for me since we started. She's 5 years with me, right? She runs all operations and runs all of HR. And all the stuff that I'm not good at, she does.
Sure.
And she's as vital part of the business as I am, or Brian is, or anybody else. It's bringing in good people and having faith in them that they can do what you've asked them to do.
So what's your greatest challenge then?
Finding them.
Is it
finding good people? And, our greatest challenge, I would say probably 6 months ago, it was our space is getting more competitive. And I didn't think that we had the right ammunition to give our sales team, which is why we made the investment to go and do the rebranding and the more importantly, the remessaging, right? There's more and more people getting into our space. We've got to look and feel and act like our process. And it was
like you're a mature business or process.
It was sort of all over the board. It's not anymore. Like, the message is very tight now. Now it's, poor Molly's job over there to make sure that people stay on message and are on brand, because we just invested a lot of money and a lot of time in this. And now we've got to take it to the market, and we've got to have our people do it in the correct way.
So, what are some of the things that you've done? Tell us a little bit about Channelpalooza, because I went last year, had a great time. You're in town because you have an event
Channelpalooza. I mean, it's sort of similar to what you started over at DCAC, right?
Didn't you start it on you did the first one? Was it not after DCAC you did the cruise, or was it the cruise? It was like a river float.
We did I think probably floated the river.
Floated the river, and then you did the lake, right?
Yeah, so we started this with 5 dudes who came down and floated the river, right? I'm like, I'm from New York and I've never floated the river. I didn't know what this was, but it sounded awesome. You got on a tube and you drank beer and you just sat there for hours.
It was awesome.
And it was greatness. And then people heard about it. They're like, oh, this is fun. Can we go? And we're like, yeah, I guess. And next thing we know, we got 40 or 50 people getting on a tube and a bus, and it was a logistical disaster, right? Having to collect $45 from everybody.
I remember getting on that bus. Everyone's all dirty. You can't manage everybody getting back.
Yeah, it was a logistical disaster, right? And then, sort of got into the channel space, right? And
well, hold on. Unlike did you put together the ski trip in Breck when we all went out there?
We did the ski trip, yeah.
That was a
ski trip.
That was not a disaster. That was a great time.
We tend to, I've got a knack for putting on pretty good events.
It looks like you threw a party and then realized that you had a lot of really important people that were there already. So you figured out, how do we make this as a productive and creative time as we can? And then you figured out how to monetize it.
How do you get more people there, right?
Yeah.
Because the events are only as good as the people who are at it.
Yeah.
so we had all these agents coming. We had all these vendors who wanted to go, and they're like, "Hey, can we pay for something here?" And I was like, "All right, yeah, start paying for stuff." And this way, people like me didn't have to pay. And then it's sort of grown. It was 75 people. It was 100. It was 200. We'll probably have 250 this year.
It's awesome.
And really, it's not run by the establishment, right? Which is big for, DCAC, right?
Sure.
It's the same thing. Like, we're not the big conference, right? Yours is a little bit different. People don't want to sit on panels, right? Because people in our industry talk about the same shit all the time. And, they don't want to sit in a panel. They don't want to go for training. They want to go meet people.
That's exactly what it is.
And they want to network.
They
want to say, hey, all right, I know what you do. So if I bring you an opportunity, I have to know that you're not going to fuck me on this, right? Because the most important thing to me is my customer relationships.
Sure.
And I'm more apt to do business with you because I met you at Channelpalooza, or I met you at another networking event, and we've shot the shit. We've sat down, we've had some cocktails, we had food together, we partied on a boat. You get to know actual people.
Sure.
And, even if their company's not really good, but that person's really good, they can make their company seem a lot better and can get more things done for you.
So I agree entirely. So the genesis behind, as you know, DCAC was same conferences, same circuits, same people talking. And the beauty is it's like a sandbox, right? We've done it all. We've done nothing but panels. We've done fireside chats. We've done, a couple of years ago, it was just technologists. We didn't even have operators. We just had nothing but technologists talking about AI and AR and VR and all the things that were driving the emerging technologies or the adoption rate of those emerging technologies, so that we could understand what this new wave was that's coming, right? Because we had, computers, and then we had phones, and then cloud, and then boom, we're off to another big, huge, I see a couple big growth opportunities in our vertical, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that when I did it, I realized that I stopped attending conferences and started just going to, I think it was you, me, and a few guys. We hijacked a couple conferences in Dallas probably, and you would end up getting all the VIPs from there anyway. And those are the people that you wanted in a room together, because this exchange of ideas took place organically. And, this year, every year at DCAC, we've got to change the lineup or the formatting of those things to kind of be more accretive to whatever was prevalent or what.
Someone's going to copy you.
There is already.
You got to sort of, keep evolving, right? You got to make it new and interesting, why people want to come, right? Because
it's the
they
networking.
could go sit at 14 different conferences and have a discussion on how you finance a data center,
sure,
or how you're going to cool some new shit or put some shit in water.
Yeah.
I think when you look at why people are doing these things, like, why do data centers need to get built in these certain locations? Why do I need different cooling? Because of what applications are driving this? That's the interesting shit.
Sure.
But no one sitting at those other conferences can tell you any of that shit, right? You're uncovering the people who are making the operators change what they're doing to fit their business. And that's how you change people's thought process. And that's how people buy differently. And that's how people consume differently.
I think if you just can be disruptive in the way that you present those things and allow people to discover it in a different way, as long as there's a foundation of trust there, then you're going to figure out that the adoption rate is higher, right? Yep. If people trust you, like you said, like, they'll suffer an inconvenience if it's cost or something, because they at least have some sort of comfort or transparency in the ability for you to deliver, right? So you've got to spin that up. And I took a page out of your playbook and rented in Cahoots for Data Center World and hosted.
They are the best.
It was the greatest. Like, that's the coolest venue. And because what we did was we did like a beer pong tournament one night, and everyone that was really critical that I think that was attending that conference that people were wanting to get, some FaceTime with, they were there with us anyway, right? Yep. We were having fun, and we were, there's just a greater exchange. People are just establishing relationships. They're not talking about their products, their shops, or what they do. It's more like their own professional IP being introduced to the other guy's professional IP. And so think about this. As I was driving here, I'm like, how long have we known each other? Because we've low crawled through the industry in many markets together. I mean, we vacation with our families together. So it's been a long time.
It's got to be.
You were at, you just left Telex, and we met in New York at some happy hour long.
Were you at Cyrus then?
I was probably at Cyrus. And
before Cyrus.
we were at some rooftop bar in New York, I think. Maybe the first time we met was...
Probably.
Oh, no. You know when the first time we met? So I had Co come in. Co did a podcast, and then because he's a diva and he's a perfectionist too, he's like, you can't air that. So I was like, you suck.
So wait, you couldn't air any of Co's stuff?
No, he didn't want me to air
nothing.
It. No, because I want you to go out of your way and give him a hard time for being...
He spent the time and came here and then wouldn't let you release anything.
He's like, I didn't like how I did on that. I'm like, you did great.
He just wants to come back. The nicest guy in the entire world.
Hands down.
You cannot find a better person than him. He's the best.
I challenge anybody to find someone that would say something negative about him, right? So, but Co was, remember when he took he had like a seizure for like a year where he had that brain fart and he left IES and he went and did that one thing.
Yep.
But remember, I think it was you and me and a couple guys, we were at the Phoenix Open and he's like, I think Jason Green, there was a bunch of us, and he's like, look, I think he sent a limo or something to pick us up. He's like, I don't care. I need you guys to come to my office. And we're like,
the Tiki Bar?
Yeah. I'm like, why am I leaving the Open to go to your office?
Because you asked us to, and we do that for you.
And we did it. I think that may be the first time that we met that night. And then, I mean, it's funny because the relationships that you pick up in this industry, they transcend, right? I mean, like you fall on the other side of the ball as me right now, so to speak. Like, not as much now because our business has also scaled and evolved, right? Yep. But we have almost 50 of us now, and we started almost 3 years ago, right? So the industry itself has kind of just picked up a life of its own. There's a lot of pent up demand in this space, but you've always been more on the telecom specialist side, and that is your bread and butter. Selling racks, like anything that comes out of a carrier hotel was your dojo, yep. Right? And I was more of PDU and up type guy to the substation. And we focus on that. Now we actually manage a lot of fit outs half our clients are enterprise, the other half are operators. And those enterprise clients are massive. But we may have those we may be managing the entire fit out deployment for a client in a facility where we actually have another team that's doing everything from the PDU up, right? So we get to kind of play on all of it now, but you're the person that we would call if we had a client that had a specific network or telecom need. But the question is, because we're going to bring it home here in a little bit. I know that you're hosting something today.
Yeah, we've got a happy hour town. We've got a new salesperson down here in Austin, so just trying to get her more ingrained with the community. So we've got one this week. Then we come back next week. We're a sponsor of an organization called SIM, which is the Society of Information Managers, which is CIOs, CTOs, VPs of IT. Really just people that make things work in enterprises. So we'd like to get back to those folks and that community. So we're sponsoring a happy hour for them next Tuesday.
Nice.
So we'll be back down here again. And there's something that I did want to touch on. We've done and sort of shifted really more towards, Channapalooza. We'll make some money on Channapalooza, right? No one's saying here that we're destitute. Sure. We're not making money on it. But we take that money, we turn it back around to the community.
Sure. In what way?
So we've got a bunch of different nonprofits that we're going to be giving money back to this year. We're going to sort of wait to announce those at Channapalooza, but there's, we started last year with the Exposure and Diversity Council, which is trying to get, minorities more into technology related fields and open up more opportunities. So we actually gave them their first donation. I think that was actually 2 years ago when they first started this organization. So we'll continue to...
what was that charity?
The Exposure and Diversity Council.
Okay.
They're predominantly in the channel distribution model that we're in, helping to find, people more opportunities there.
Sure.
And they've got some other philanthropic things that they do for, different communities. Like one year we went and bought books and, put stickers in them and, gave them out to, kids who needed new books for the summer.
Sure.
So we'll do stuff like that. A bigger focus also towards women in technology. Really didn't think it was going to be a big thing for me, but when you've got two daughters, it becomes a big thing for you, to make sure that they're going to have an opportunity in the tech space going forward. Whether they choose to do that or not is up to them. But anything that we can do to sort of make tech more relevant for young girls, we're going to,
sure,
try to put a lot of our efforts towards that. And then sort of our third arm of, where we're doing from a philanthropy perspective and a giving perspective is towards kids. Really underprivileged kids, and how do we help give back to those communities and different organizations that help in different ways. We sort of try to, go in and vet those out and make sure that, this money is going to help the kids directly. So those are some of the
that's awesome
nonprofits that we're going to be giving to this year at Channelpalooza.
That's awesome. DCAC is all about that too. We always do a charity golf tournament every year. This year we're going to do it. I'm going to have a guy from one tribe, which formerly represented 22 kill, which is the number of veterans that kill themselves every day. That number is no longer 22. I think it's 20 now, but the number's going down as a byproduct of people that are doing grassroots things like you. But everything we do with DCAC, we didn't do it to make money. We did it to make a difference. And as disruptive as it is, we typically try to run it. Everything goes back into the show, the conference.
100%.
Can't afford Gary Busey if you don't have I have that picture of you and him on stage.
God. Oh, yeah. What a train wreck that dude was. He didn't even make it through the whole show, did he?
He was a tough person to manage on that. It was an idea that came from
it was a good idea.
So it was a idea that was developed after some good drinking while on a hunting trip with Kincaid at Stream. And I was like, that's genius. And I almost felt like he was challenging me, like, I dare you to do it. So that was the year we had the Dan band there too, remember?
Yep.
And I do like that. This year we're trying to book a stand-up comedian that comes in. He plays at Joe Rogan's Comedy Store downtown, and he's just on that hairy edge where I think that he could be in front of the entire DCA. I mean, we may have 1,000 people, I think, this year, right? And
that's awesome.
And the thing is how do you put someone in front of them that could make people laugh without offending, right? So I think this is the guy.
You need a professional to do that.
Yeah, so I think that this guy may be able to come in and toe the line, but you got to constantly be mixing it up. But I do think that what you're doing with your platform, with Channelpalooza, and being able to weaponize that or use it as a vehicle to bring value to the people outside of what you're doing on business, I think that's a great thing. And I think a lot of people, maybe that's something you should promote a little bit more. We just launched Anchors of Hope at Overwatch yesterday, 70th anniversary of D-Day, and it lands 97 days, goes to September 11th, and it's to help the veteran community, right?
Oh,
but
nice.
Every time that you could do something with what we do as our businesses where you could contribute to the community in some way. Everybody has a different type of community.
Yes. Something's important to different people, right? People give to causes that they think need the help, right?
Exactly.
And who are we to say your course sucks? Everyone's got, it's helping. Who cares? You're helping somebody.
Well, listen, I'll bring this home.
Is about.
What time's your party?
This is not a party. This is just a happy hour. When it's a party, I'll tell you. This is low key.
Well, I just got 7 text messages. Are you going to Rob's party? So I don't know what that means. It sounds like I'm joking.
There better be another Rob in town, and that text better be on my phone.
The question is, I always have a few questions, right? Because I know you have some other stuff going on while you're down here. Last questions are: how do you codify the people that are going to be listening? Some won't know, some may know you, some may not, and they are going to be in the earliest stages of their careers. And they're going to be trying to figure out, which way do I navigate through this? I could work for a carrier hotel, I could work for a retail or a managed service provider or a wholesale provider, or I could work within the ecosystem and be a consultant for it, or I could be someone that's providing, if not a service, then a widget or something. So these people that, we had multiple different changes throughout our career, right? So when you're trying to figure out what you want to do, what's your advice to people, and how would you codify your experience having been in this space? Has it been, I feel very blessed to be in this industry. I love this industry. A lot of my good friends are in this industry.
Yep, totally agree.
So what would be a message you'd have for them? And then I have one last question.
Yeah, I would say you're going to make mistakes in your career, right? But learn from each one of those. Find what makes you happy. I've had jobs where I had an ulcer coming to work every day and I hated it. And It was a job that paid me double what the job before that paid. And I quit and went back to the old job at half the salary, because quality of life is important, probably more important now than ever. And learn as much as you can. Learn as much as you can. Meet as many people as possible. Talk to them about their experiences, especially if you're young. You're going to have to make decisions in your life of what you want to do without having the necessary experience. So you've got to go lean on other people for their experiences. So if you have an opportunity to be in front of, your peers or, different people in your industry, or maybe not even in your industry, have conversations with them about their careers. How do they get to a certain place? What mistakes have they made before? What do they wish that they did differently? What do they like about their jobs? That's stuff you can't get from reading the internet. That stuff you've got to, you've got to look somebody in the eye and ask them, a serious question about what they're doing, how they do get to their spot in their career. You'll learn more sitting in front of somebody and talking to them as opposed to reading about, their experience. You'll see their facial expressions. You'll see, their joy, their sadness, their frustration. That's why I'm so happy that we're out of the sitting behind a computer phase of, the last 2 years, right? Because I think interaction with people is so important.
No, that's good. And that's a good answer. I guess I lied because I have a second question now that I definitely wanted to circle back to, because you've said it a few times, like, we're just looking for good people. So for those people that don't know you and they don't know what you're looking for, what are you looking for? What qualifies someone as the right person or the good person?
Let me tell you a story first. So the woman who runs marketing for me now is fulfilling her lifelong dream to go live up in New York City. So we'll send her up there with a couple of rat traps and some bear spray, make sure she doesn't get in trouble in New York City. But I said, well, I need to go find somebody. So I went on LinkedIn, amongst other places, and there's a hashtag that says open to work. You Google open to work. I found 50 people. I sort by Dallas. I sort by marketing. I LinkedIn messaged 50 people. One person responded. These are recent college graduates. One person with a hashtag that says, I need a job.
Open for hiring.
I need a job. One person responded, and she ended up moving to Virginia and didn't want to work in Dallas. So there's jobs out there for people. The second was, then we went to a recruiter, and they're trying to source people for us, and they did a good job. But we went back to SMU and we said, hey, we're looking for this type of person. And we ended up hiring a person that wanted to work. They were on vacation, and 10 minutes after the woman from SMU sent out the email, she responded back and said, hey, I'm on vacation, but I can meet with them on Friday.
Hungry.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, right? Hungry.
We want people who want to learn and want to work.
So they don't have to have experience. They don't need to know what the channel is. They don't need to know what all this... You use a lot of big words, right? So all this network words that you're throwing around, they don't need to know all that stuff. It's a dialect that you can teach them.
That's part of what we do, right? Is we want to be able to introduce people to what we do. And you're not going to... If I wanted to hire someone that was exactly what we needed, we would never find them.
Sure.
Right? It's our job, especially with the younger people, to introduce them to our field and what we do. Yeah. And then, they make a decision. Hey, is this what I want to do? But you're going to come in, and if you want to learn, we've got the ability to teach you as much as you want.
So that's, I think, one of the most critical parts. We have 27 open job recs right now, right? And I had to hire dedicated recruiters for our business just to find the staff that we need, because we were, using a ton of recruiting companies.
Yep.
And finding humble, hungry, and smart. Pat Lencioni wrote that famous book, The Ideal Characteristics of a Team Player. Finding those people coming out of college that it's a hard shift coming out of college, I've learned. And I've always hired college graduates from Hicks to Isaac to, you name it. My most recent hire. They're so used to being students that they're used to being told everything. And I kind of give my marketing person not enough information intentionally, because I wanted to callous her brain. I want her to, the struggle should be real. If like I hear this is where I need you to finish, and I need you to finish on this date. And I do it because I want to see, like, will they engage with their fellow team and ask for collaboration? Will they come to me and ask questions? Or are they going to Google it? Or there's always...
At least they're doing something.
That's what you want, is you want someone who's willing to work, right?
I told Molly sitting over there the other day, just like I tell anybody else, tell my kids, anybody else on my team, use all your resources before you come and ask me.
Exactly.
If you use all your resources and you can't figure it out, come to me and we'll figure it out together. Now, if I go and Google it and it's the first answer on Google, I might lose my mind. I said, but you use your resources and you can't figure it out. That's what we're here as a team to do, is figure it out together, because there's going to be things that we need to do that no one here has done before. And we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to make them together.
They have to learn to go find the answers on their own instead of waiting to be told those answers from a professor or teacher.
Yep.
I mean, I'm still going to coach and mentor, but like I have a couple guys on my team that and I'm pushing them because I'm like, how come you haven't filled these positions fast enough? I'm not asking them. I mean, the standard for what we run at isn't measured by what we describe or define. It's really based on what we tolerate.
Yep.
And when I go to them, I'm like, why aren't you filling these things? I'm not asking you to lower the bar, but why aren't you? And the optics are that they kind of they all have a tendency of measuring everyone against themselves. And they're like, this person doesn't know these things. And I'm like, they're going to come in. Like, we can't find anybody that 100%. I'm like, find 80%. And then it's your job to find the blind spots and fix those 20. I'd rather them be 70% and have no baggage or bad habits that I have to retrain and recoach out 100%. Of them anyway. Right. So I'm like, you just need a blank canvas with someone that has a high energy level.
Yeah.
So
they want to go out and do shit.
Yeah, I mean, some of our clients will say, hey, they have to have X amount of whatever. And you're like, look, that's nice to have, but that's not a need to have. I have some people that are exceptional at what they do, and they only have a year or two of experience.
I take that risk on behalf of you.
Exactly
why
right.
you hire me.
Exactly right. So what's the last thing for you, since you kind of did a good job of explaining or giving some last-minute advice to anybody else that could be listening that's trying to get into the space or even discover an opportunity with you? What is the number one reason why people would want to hire you guys, and what is it that you can do that's different from anybody else?
Yep. We have a lot of experience in this space. It's not something that you should go alone. Our job is to go, like I said, a mile wide and an inch thick, to figure out what the new trends are in the space and bring them to you. Trust that our process of vetting vendors is second to none in the industry. And it's not that we're going to take you from vendor selection through implementation through life cycle. We're going to be there to hold your hand the entire way. That's how we deliver an exceptional customer experience. And if you want to learn more about what Mejeticks does, you can call me, but I'll give you our customers' phone numbers to call. Those are the people who are going to tell you the best parts about our company and why they still use us.
Well, listen, as a guy that's got the opportunity to watch you grow through the industry, it's awesome to sit down with you again. I wish that we had more of these opportunities, but sometimes you go to different trade shows than we go to, and whenever we have the opportunity to connect with each other, we always try to do it and stay in orbit, because there are times where we could kind of have a conversation that sends some traffic either way. But who would have thought, when we were having hallway races and all the dumb things.
I missed the hallway race. When I had my foot surgery. I missed the greatest Vegas trip of all time.
That was
because I was in a freaking knee scooter and couldn't get to Vegas.
Yeah, there was a few times though where we've had some shows in other markets.
We've had a lot of good fun.
Yeah, man, this industry is awesome, right? It provides a really good learning environment if you want to learn, and it rewards those that work the hardest.
No, you're so right. You talked about it before. If I haven't seen somebody in 3 years, we'd pick up like it was yesterday.
Yeah, man. So I'm happy for you. Congratulations. I'm happy to see that you guys are. It sounds like you're at a 2.0 level with this whole new rebrand. So it's exciting to see what you guys do next.
We're getting there. And the same to you guys. I mean, who would have thought two of us be sitting here running companies?
I know. Now we're
10 years ago.
We got to be all grown up now and got to watch what we say.
Yep.
Make sure that it's. Before it was like, there's no HR here.
Yeah, we're fine. We're totally okay.
Right. So, well, listen, man. Thanks for making the time. I look forward to hanging out with you a little bit more over the next, couple of weeks and months to go.
Anytime you need me, let me know.
You got it, man. Thanks, Rob.